The wickedness of humanity. Noah lived many, many years after Adam. The period of this early part of the Bible was centuries long. The inspired writer divides it very simply into two periods, from Adam to the flood, and from the flood to Abraham. The writer gives a few names of both good and bad, and some scant facts of history. The one idea he wants to bring out strongly is the wickedness of man and woman because of Adam and Eve's sin. Wickedness, badness, evil, rather than goodness, found a ready place in the hearts of God's people. The record tells of an early material progress and gives credit to Cain and his descendants for building the first city, which very likely was but the centering of a few stone huts. Cain, it is said, named the city after Enoch, his eldest son. The number of men increased rapidly, so that crowded conditions and the raisings of flocks necessitated a change in ways of living. The habits of nomadic peoples, people moving about and having no fixed homes, were established. The Cainites invented musical instruments and discovered how to produce and use metals. Moreover, Lamech, one of Cain's sons, made weapons for fighting, which were better than the clubs and stones they were accustomed to. The curse put on these people because of their father Cain remained with them, and the sins of man increased. They lost sight of the ways of God and were irreverent toward him, not holy toward God. Instead of goodness, a spirit of vengeance dwelt in their hearts. They had no respect for human life. Revenge was looked upon as justice. Murder and immoral ways of living held no horrors for them. But God was not completely forgotten by these descendants of Adam and Eve. There is a consoling sentence recorded in the Bible pertaining to this period. At that time, men and women began to call on the name of the Lord. Following immediately upon this statement is a chapter which names mighty men of the past, the fathers of the generations who feared God. Among them was one called Seth, who was given to Adam and Eve to console them for Abel's tragic loss. Seth, it is said, lived to the age of 912. Enoch is also mentioned. Because of his great holiness, it was believed that the Lord took him from the face of the earth at an unusually early age. He remained on earth for only 365 years, and he is supposed not to have died. And then there was Methuselah, who was the oldest of all these great holy men. He lived for 969 years. Much later in the Bible, St. Luke, in his Gospel, which was written ages and ages after these events, traces a direct family line from Christ through all biblical history, right back to all these men, even to Seth, and as far back as Adam. Now we come to the period of the flood. Man had corrupted his ways. Man had become sinful. Of this the Bible says, when God saw that the wickedness of man on earth was great, and that man's every thought and all the inclinations of his heart were only evil, he regretted he had made man on the earth and was grieved to the heart. Then the Lord said, I will wipe from the face of the earth humankind whom I have created, man, woman, and beast, crawling creatures, and birds of the air as well, for I regret that I made them. But one man, Noah, found favor with the Lord. He was just and blameless before God, and untouched by the corruption of his age. What people thought of Noah, Noah didn't mind. Only what God thought of him mattered. And God said to Noah, "The end of all creatures of the flesh is in my mind. The earth is full of violence because of humans. I will destroy them with the earth." So Noah, his 3 sons, his wife, and the wives of his sons, they alone found favor with God. Then God gave Noah instructions about building the ark, which was to be their refuge during the great flood. It may be well, once again, to renew our belief in the writings of the holy men who wrote the Bible. God, we know, spoke through them, and in this particular story is warning humankind against sin. During these days preceding before the flood, the writer's one intention is to show the growth of wickedness, the growth of sin, and the awful truth of humanity's deep and hardened wickedness of heart. Adam sinned and tried to hide from God. Cain's reaction to sin showed a rebellious heart. He refused to accept the responsibility of sin. Now Lamech, Cain's son, he was even worse than his father. Murder multiplied murder. Man's days became lawless. Violence was everywhere. The moral ways of living, that means the good ways of living, were entirely forgotten. Sin, selfishness, murder, and revenge went on increasing. The writer uses the lives of these people as a scheme or a way to show us what sin can do. He uses another scheme to impress us with the wickedness of crime. To the Hebrews, a long life was a blessing and a short life a punishment, or so they believed. And so during this period of sin, the writer shows that the wicked men lived short lives while good men lived many, many years. To the ancient people, numbers were never taken literally. They were never taken for what they actually stood. Numbers were symbols and signs to help the writer say what they meant. So a long life was a symbol of goodness of heart. A short life was a symbol of wickedness. During those days of wickedness, there were some good men who gave a brighter side to the story. These were the sons and daughters of Seth and were known as the sons of God. And they, the writer tells us, lived many, many years. But after centuries of human life, God found that all humanity, except Noah and Mrs. Noah and their family, all had become wicked.